Welcome back to r/Neighbors from Hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And guys, quickly before we start, we have a little bit of fan art from r/RipeStories posted by user Evil Kettle. And of course guys, in times where everybody loves crows, this is very much appreciated. Thank you so much. And the first one is titled, Entitled Neighbor Spends Thousands of Dollars to Try and Get Rid of Some Geese. This story is not your typical entitled people story because it does not involve Karens and Kens bullying people to get whatever they want. My neighbors are really sweet from what I've heard. I've never personally met them. We live in an upper middle class neighborhood. Just to give you some scale, the adjoining neighborhood houses easily go over 7 figures. Anyway, my neighbors own 2 lots next to their house that they use as a buffer between our other neighbors, where they just tend to a bunch of grass and some small trees. A few years ago, when they cut all the trees down and planted the grass, we got our flock of residential Canadian geese that refuse to migrate north. We live in the deep, deep south. The geese had been living pretty peacefully for years until a few months ago. For some reason, when I was driving home from running errands, I saw not 1 or 2, but 4 coyote decoys sitting in their backyard next to the water. It should be important to note that each of these coyotes cost up to about $75, which adds up pretty quickly. This little solution to the geese problem only lasted about 2 days, as the geese caught on to what was going on and went right back to being their sassy selves in the pond and backyard. My neighbors were pissed and started to move the decoys around every morning in their war against the geese. They failed. About a month later, I went for a walk past their house and noticed a pretty big fountain sitting in the middle of the neighborhood pond that borders their house and a ton of other houses, including that 7 figures neighborhood. I was just thinking to myself, how entitled can you be to set a fountain up in a public pond to get rid of some geese? I've got no idea how they managed to get a fountain in when our HOA is like every HOA and is a nightmare, or how favors they had to call in from neighbors to get the thing installed. This solution did not even last 2 days and the geese returned. The geese were even bold enough to sleep right in front of the decoys without a care in the world. On another walk about a month ago, I noticed another fountain was installed on the opposite end of the pond. This solution never worked and the geese did not even bat an eye. This entire saga of decoys, fountains and war on the geese was hilarious to watch from my perspective. The same day I saw the second fountain, I hilariously saw one of the geese smugly walk up to my neighbor in his backyard and start honking and flapping its wings right in his face. My neighbor retreated and the goose won the battle. I looked up the relative price of the fountains and they range from $2,000 to $3,000. So in all, at the moment, they just spent shy of $3,300 on this little adventure. I will update if anything new happens, but it is fair to say that the geese won the war and peace talks are underway. And by the way guys, I remember in the past we have already read a previous story, and I think it was about Canadian geese, and that you should definitely not F around with these creatures. And the next one is titled, Neighbor is using my paid parking spot and has even gotten me towed. Landlord has not done anything. I rent an apartment and an assigned exterior parking space within my complex's parking lot is included in my rent. I have a parking pass that I display in my car and documentation from my landlord stating that this specific spot belongs to me. I have a neighbor that always parks in my spot. I have contacted my landlord every time this happens, asking him to handle it, but nothing ever happens. I have also kept a log of every time I notice this neighbor in my spot and when I have contacted my landlord. For what it is worth, neighbor does not have a visible parking pass on his car and also puts a cone in my spot when he is gone to reverse it, so I don't think this is just confusion. I don't think he owns a spot at all. This past weekend, said neighbor had my car towed from my spot. I confronted him in person, but all he did was claim that the spot was his. I once again contacted my landlord, who stated that this spot was indeed mine. I shouldn't have been towed, and he would speak with my neighbor to reiterate that it is my spot. Well, apparently neighbor did not listen, because last night he was in my spot again. I called a towing company, the same one that towed me, to have him towed last night, but they either did not come or were talked out of it by him, because when I woke up this morning his car was still there. Additional info that might be relevant: my complex is managed by an HOA, and my landlord always claims he will notify them when I make a complaint about my neighbor. I am growing incredibly frustrated with this situation as I pay for this spot. With that being said, I would appreciate advice on the following questions. What can I do to stop my neighbor from using my spot? Number 2. What actions can I take to ensure my neighbor doesn't get me towed from a spot that I am authorized to use? Update added: I just spoke with the HOA. They confirmed that the spot is mine and that this neighbor doesn't even have a parking spot at all. HOA also said he should have never been authorized to have my car towed and are speaking with the towing company to ensure it won't happen again. Finally, they provided me with a 24/7 emergency number that I can call to have my neighbor towed every time he is in my spot. And this, my friends, was one of the very rare instances where an HOA actually did something good. And in case you are also surprised by that, I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and maybe post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is entitled Neighbor Steals Dogs and then returns them after destroying his house. I read a few stories on here and it reminded me of an incident that occurred years ago dealing with 2 dogs my older sister acquired from a friend. The roster in this story: MS, my sister, she is much older than me, kind of a pain in the butt. Me as myself, younger sister, and the living hemorrhoid created to annoy my older sister. AC for Animal Control Officer. The lady was a power tripping jerk. EN entitled Neighbor. Trollface entitled Neighbor's Wife. She looked like an angry troll. And also my dad as himself, think Christopher Walken old school Queens, New York accent. At the time I was working 2 jobs and I was staying with my sister. It is my sister's place, so she can do as she pleases when it comes to having animals. She had taken in a female cocker spaniel named Mercy and her puppy that was 5 months old. She got the dogs from her friend with the agreement if the dogs did not work out she would take them back. Mercy and her puppy were purebred and a product of incestuous breeding. I have never agreed with anyone who breeds animals that seem to think it is a good idea to enforce incestuous breeding. The result is a purebred animal with medical and mental problems. It was obvious that Mercy and her puppy were the product of several generations of inbreeding due to the behavior displayed. MS had just acquired the dogs and immediately the dogs were using the inside of the house as a toilet. What was weird, all meals were timed and they were fed twice a day at specific times with specific amounts for individual weight and age. You could take them out and walk them for 2 hours and I kid you not, the second they were brought inside they would piss and crap. MS finally decided to put the dogs on the enclosed porch to better control bathroom training. The porch was huge and she had a large doghouse for them to stay in for shelter. It was nice because if they did have an accident it was easy to clean. This was in the middle of spring and she would have them out there during the day. It did not get cold where we live and she was hoping to break them out of their habit of pissing and crapping all over the house. When MS got off work the dogs were brought inside and monitored. Our dad would come by and help too since he had nothing better to do. Plus MS would hook him up with his favorite coffee and cake. The routine was the dogs would eat in the morning and taken for a good 30-minute walk and then put on the porch for 5 hours. My sister would come home for lunch and repeat the process, hoping to break the bad habit. Food and water were restricted to get them to toilet outside. EN across the street would stare and shake his head like this was the most horrible thing he ever saw. A week later I was on my way to work when I see an animal control vehicle blocking me in. I see the door open and this short overweight woman with Coke bottle glasses approaches the porch. I come out. Me? Can I help you? AC? Yes, I just received a complaint about animal abuse going on here. Me? Excuse me? I don't know what you're talking about. AC? Really? Then why are those 2 dogs being left on your porch? Animal control lady decides to go inside the porch without permission and sees the Mercy and her puppy chilling out in the doghouse chewing on toys. They were not chained and free to move around the enclosed porch. AC? Look at this! This is cruel! Dogs that are kept outside require access to food and water at all times. Me? Really? These animals have been fed and watered. Second, both dogs are not chained. Third, I believe you are referring to livestock. And last, if that is the law, then I need you to show me where we are required to do so. AC? I could take these animals right now. Me? Really? These animals are in the middle of potty training, which is why they are kept on this porch during the day for a few hours and then brought in at night. Second, you are trespassing. You need to leave right now. Before she could say anything, my dad pulls up and he lived down the street from MS. My dad gets out and rips the AC a new one. The best part, imagine Christopher Walken with a huge biker beard pissed off. And yes, that is who my dad sounds like, and chased AC back into her vehicle with his words. My dad: I've had it with you. Get the F out of here now. I'm gonna be talking to your boss. You got a lot of nerve. I finally got to work late and my dad took care of informing my sister of what happened. AC's officer supervisor knew my dad and apologized for the incident that happened. He complained, and yes, what we were doing is 100% legal and allowed. There was no harm done to the dogs in any way, and MS was trying to get them trained. Animal control would not be bothering us in the future. The dogs were left, and apparently EN was horrified that animal control did not do anything. It was kind of obvious with the nasty scowling stares from him and his wife. 2 days pass and MS came home to find that the dogs were gone. Someone took them and she was extremely upset. She was sure that EN had taken them but could not prove it. About 5 days go by and magically the dogs are sitting there on the porch like they had never left. We see EN and Trollface arguing with a carpet cleaning company about the dog crap inside the house. It sounded like the two did not bother to clean up the crap and expected the cleaner to do it, who refused. I remember the cleaner told them that they needed to remove the feces and he would be more than happy to clean the carpets. My dad and I could not stop laughing because we found out that the dogs destroyed the carpets in EN's house. The 2 idiots must have given them excess food and water 24/7, and what goes in must come out. The dogs did not seem to have an off switch when it came to water and food. You had to limit them or they would puke, piss and crap all over the place. They had all the shots, no parasites, and we think they were not right due to the historic inbreeding. MS eventually gave up and returned the dogs to her friend. It seemed that no matter what we did to try and train them to go outside, nothing worked. Oh, and MS had a professional carpet shampoo machine, so the carpets were kept very clean. The last straw was Mercy refusing to walk on a lead, and she bit my sister, drawing blood. We think the EN must have done something, but the dogs were not right in the head. Mercy also became aggressive with her puppy and we had to separate them. The friend ended up taking them back and they were kept on a farm, which worked better for the dogs. And here is where it gets good. EN and Trollface show up on MS' door demanding MS pay for damages done to her carpet. First they call animal control about the dogs and then decide to steal the dogs and now want MS to pay for the damage done. Nope, not happening, and my dad tells them to piss off. Trollface: You're gonna pay for this. Look at what your dogs did. She shows us pictures of a literal crap show. It was nasty. My dad: What the F is wrong with you? You twos are thieves. You better get now. He takes the garden hose and sprays the 2 of them off the property while yelling at them. Yeah, you like that, you thief. And they ran back to the house and stayed away. For the next year, EN and his Trollface wife shot dirty looks to us, but for the most part left us alone after that until the kids put in a basketball hoop. That is another story for another day though. And the last one is from our own subreddit r/ripe stories, and it was posted by user thefoxtrot86. It is titled "Sell my jars, you are evicted today." This happened to my grandfather in the early 80s when he decided to rent out my great-grandfather's deceased mother's house on a month-to-month lease for a bit of extra income. This lease was not really on paper, and back then an agreement and handshake was still good enough for my grandpa. He is one of those salt of the earth type of people who doesn't like to be angry or violent, but that just meant that when he did truly get angry, run. The house was pretty old, as it had been built around the turn of the 20th century, somewhere in the 1900s to 1910s. And being a deep woods farmhouse of the time, it was not exactly built to modern standards. The whole building was built on a foundation of stones without any concrete or mortar. The walls and floors were pretty much a single layer of milled wood with wallpaper on the inside and a paneling on the outside that was made out of the same type of material as shingles, but was made to resemble brick walls. There was a tin roof and no ceiling in the attic. Needless to say, it was a drafty old house, so the rent for it was fairly cheap. And the one family that rented it out were some of the worst people my grandfather ever knew. The father of the family was a man named Roger. I don't really know much about Roger other than the fact that he was a liar, coward and a thief. Because the old house his family rented was drafty, they were burning a lot of firewood in the stove to keep it warm. Which was fine, as Roger was allowed to cut his own wood for it, but I guess he was too lazy to even bother. When Roger's family ran out of firewood, they started burning anything they could find outside and even inside. When that no longer yielded anything good to burn, they started actually ripping up floorboards in near the garage to burn instead. My grandfather caught them on this, and Roger said he would repair the damage with new wood, but he of course never did. Eventually my grandfather went to check the basement of the old house because he had several antique jars in storage there. They were those old canning jars with the glass lid that had a wire latch mechanism to press said glass lid down on an orange rubber ring to seal it. But when my grandfather went to check on the jars, he found most of them were missing, and many that were remaining were the less desirable ones. This next part is pretty much burned into the memories of anyone who was nearby. I have literally only ever seen my grandfather truly mad once in my life over something bad one of my aunts did when she eloped with her third husband. So when I heard the story of this day, even I cringed, and I wasn't even born yet when it happened. My grandpa was just over 6 feet tall and strong as an ox back then, so he could be rather intimidating without realizing it. So genuine anger from him was enough to make most people afraid of him when it happened. On that day my grandfather blew his top. Everyone on the farm heard him yell, "Roger!" Roger came outside cowering like a dog with its tail between its legs. My grandfather pointed to the basement entrance and angrily asked, "What is this?" Roger, "What is what?" Grandfather, "This! I had hundreds of valuable antique canning jars in this basement, and now most of them are gone. Where are they?" Roger lowered his head while fidgeting and said, "Well, I kind of sold them." At this point, steam may as well have been coming out of my grandfather's ears because he was absolutely furious. One thing I learned as a child was not to mess with my grandfather's antiques, especially after his own nasty mother gave a bunch of his vintage marble collection away 20 years earlier to a neighbor kid that sold them all at school. So Roger just signed his own eviction with that action. My grandpa, still red in the face, said, "Pack your bags, you and your family are out of here today." Roger could not even look my grandpa in the eyes, let alone beg for another chance. He knew there was no negotiating, as him and his family packed up and drove the family farm without another word to my grandpa or any of my family. None of us ever heard from them again. And guys, unfortunately, we have already reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you haven't already, please also go to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where I upload exclusive Reddit videos starting at just $3 a month. This is a great way to support me in case you are interested, and the chance for me to become independent from YouTube revenue. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.